Hey everyone, figured I'd give you a little bit of a material breakdown or so for supplies. Release agent or so, most should be aware by now or so. The rubbing alcohol 70% all the way up to 99%, with 10% the castor oil. UDB is just the pharmaceutical stuff. Just mix it and give it a shake every time you go to use. Give it a quick spray. One really important thing that most people don't mention is that when you spray this in your molds, make sure that it is completely evaporated out. If there's any alcohol left in your mold, any residue liquid of alcohol that hasn't evaporated off, it'll break down the concrete. So when you pull your concrete out, the area where the alcohol had contact will be all grainy and sandy and pitted and everything. So make sure you give it enough time to evaporate. I use a fan. I turn the fan down towards the inside of it to get some airflow that dries them out really quick. As far as the fibers that go into it, they come from small things to big things. Oops, I make a mess trying to do this. Woo. These are very, very thin little fibers, alkali resistant fibers. I've got stuff all the way up to 1.5 inches, just depending on if it's a big bench. I don't need the fine stuff. If it's something with real finessey little details, then I use that stuff. As far as doing the fiberglassing, the Pardal paste, we've had a lot of discussions recently on this. Pardal paste number 2 is the wax that I use. That goes onto the latex first. I only put one coat or so, but I'm very careful. I look for the shiny spots and I make sure I cover those over. When you put this on the latex, it goes flat looking. The sheen of the latex will show areas that you haven't missed it. If you're not 100% sure, put a second coat on. This stuff here, it's got an expiry date, which I don't understand. So I think it's like salt or so. You know, they put an expiry date on salt. It's in the earth for 20 million years. How does it go bad in a year in your cupboard? I think this is the same thing, at least for our purpose. Maybe for other uses it has an expiry date. I use a piece of microfiber cloth and I just wipe it around and I use it to wipe it onto the latex or so. Very thin film. You don't want to see caked up pieces. Caked up pieces will never dry. Put that back on there. And then after that, you put the Pardal film number 10. That's the green stuff. You put this on very thin. I wouldn't spray it on or so. It has got a very elasticy kind of film. It is a vinyl. The PVA is polyvinyl. Is it acetate? Don't quote me on the last initial. But anyways, it's vinyl. So all you're going to do is take a paintbrush, a very, very thin paintbrush or something very, very light, and just coat over the whole area that you're covering. And so you can see on the stuff here, it's a very, it falls apart very easily. This is some old caked on stuff that's on the top of this, but a very thin layer. This is a gallon jug or so. You can get smaller ones or so. Don't know if you can get them on Amazon or not or so. I think the Pardal paste you can. It's not cheap or so to buy in small containers. It's definitely better to buy in volume. It does go a long ways. Like you'll get an awful lot out of a gallon. Or this one here is this is a gallon too. It's got a size on it here anyways. I'm going to guess this is a gallon. Doesn't actually say, at least not visibly. And that's basically that or so. As far as the resin for the fiberglass, I use a marine resin or so. It's a waxed resin. So when you use it or so, if you let it harden, if you let it cure, and you go to put another layer on after it's kicked off and cured, the second layer is not going to stick. It's not going to stick very well. It's going to end up separating off. So if that's the case and you have to add more, sand it or take some acetone, wipe it down with some acetone, and then you can put another coat onto it. If you get the resin that has that isn't waxed, then you can put layer to layer onto it or so, but it is a lot more, around here it's a lot more expensive than stuff. The stuff that I use or so comes from an auto body supplier. Just fiberglass polyester resin. Swinging around here, not get you too dizzy. The fiberglass mat, take my sign off of there. The fiberglass mat or so is just your traditional, I think it's 1.5 ounce or 2 ounce or so. I think it's 1.5 ounce that I buy. I buy it from Amazon or so. It's by far the cheapest for me to find anywheres. The local supplier that I get the resin from, he's about 10 times the price of Amazon for a regular mat. And it's just, it comes in cheap. The stuff I get, it comes folded. I'm tearing it into little pieces, so I'm not working on a car, so I don't need to worry about it being nice and smooth and level and all that kind of thing. But that's basically the essentials for making molds. So like I said, your release agents, your fibers, your part pastes, and your wax and your resins. The additives for the cement, or so they vary, different recipes and stuff like that people use. But these are pretty much the basics, so across the board. The option to the polyester resin is to go with the fiber, with the not the fiberglass. I'm having a brain fart here. The plaster gauze. It is heavier to work with. It's not as durable, but it's a lot easier because it doesn't stink. This stuff is very toxic, so you make sure you got a respirator on and the whole ventilated and the whole thing. You definitely don't want to do that in your house. You do that in a shed or in a covered awning area, or so someplace where where the mess is not going to. If you look at my bench, I don't know if you'd be able to see this, but there is probably an extra 1/4 inch of thickness on my bench from resin spills. And you can see sort of droplets there. Well, those are droplets on top of droplets on top of droplets. Actually, there's kind of like the flowing lava of a section that I had wood beside it, and I had the container here and dumping it off. Yeah, it makes a mess or so. Actually, we'll mention one other thing too. The hardener for the resin. This is a big bottle for a big 5-gallon jug. When you're mixing it, follow the instructions, do the measurements, do the accuracy or so on that, and base it on room temperature. If it's really cold outside, it's probably not going to set. It's not going to set well. If it's too hot, it's going to set and it's going to kick off really fast. You can have more or less of the hardener into it for this purpose. I'm not a believer in an exact number for that, but use it initially from the exact number so you have an idea. And then if you add more, you can make it kick off faster. And if you add less, it gives you more time. So where that comes handy, if you've got a surface like here, where you got the top here. If you had something big and you had a lot of overhang like that, having something that kicks off faster, so it comes in really handy to keep it kicked off on the or to keep it hardened on the surface, so it's not falling on you all the time. One of the things I've came in that was handy too. Find them here. There's a little bit of a shake around here. Is at the dollar store. They sell these little clamps, and I got like I think 12 for $1.25. And I'll put the fiberglass mat on the bottom, and I'll pinch it to the cardboard, and it keeps it up until it hardens or so. You waste some of them. Usually they just pop off anyways, and you just reuse them. They become, just like my big ones here, they become a hairy mess with all the stuff stuck to it, but they do the job, and it saves you a lot of frustration and new words created because of stuff falling off. The vertical sides and stuff like that, you can use the slower resin or so for that. I wouldn't mix different batches for different areas. You only do that if you got a big area with got a lot of horizontal stuff that you're dealing with. For something like this, I would just use the clamps. Anyways, I hope that helps with some of the figuring out what materials and stuff like that. But those are the basics or so of what you use. Where you get them or so. You're going to have to search in your local areas to see. Amazon is a great help for some of the stuff. Automotive supply centers are a great help. Where I am here in Canada, so some of the stuff comes from Ontario, some of the stuff comes from BC. So there's no, I haven't found one place that carries it all. But the automotive places or fiberglass, if you look up fiberglass suppliers, usually you'll find the part paste and the part films. The resins, same thing, fiberglass suppliers or automotive suppliers. The alcohol and castor oil, that's any drugstore you can get that at. The fiberglass mat, like I said, for me, Amazon is by far the best or so, and that pretty much will probably true anywhere in North America for that stuff from what I've seen for prices. As far as the silicone tubes, I just go to the local retailers here. They are all crazy priced right now, hoping the silicone tubes come down in price. With silicone tubes that I make the proto putty out of the stuff, the fillers on this are pushing $12 a regular tube of silicone right now, whereas it used to be three and change prior to COVID. So hopefully they come down. I wish that stuff was sold in large tubes, the big, I think they're 700 mil or 750 mil tubes. But they only come in the regular ones that I can find around here. If GE's listening or so, and they hear that or so, please get them into bigger tubes locally in Canada. Save people a lot of money, including contractors. Anyways, take care for now.